I think in my entire journalistic career, I have interviewed Karan Johar more often than anybody else, and I'm not just talking about film stars. And he's probably one of my two favorite people in the film industry interview. I don't think it's difficult to guess who the second person is. When the opportunity to do this book came up, I was absolutely delighted. So I used to meet Karan for these very long, intense interview sessions. And they were, I think, quite emotionally draining for him. They were exhausting, but he never flinched. And I was so terrified of losing my recordings because Karan was so busy and getting time from him was not easy. I used to make multiple backups so that if this for some reason, went off, then I would have another one. And if that went off, I would have another one. So I think I have about 5 Karan recordings all over my house of every interview I ever did. When I was finally transcribing and putting the book into shape, I was very careful, and I really wanted Karan's voice to come through. His voice, which is a very warm, conversational, inviting, sensitive, very beautiful voice, and I did not want it to be, because he's not like that, like some big celebrity on a high perch, telling everybody about his glorious life. It was not like that. It was almost like he was confiding in his readers. And it's not easy, to do that, to bare your heart and soul. But I think Karan did it so beautifully that when you read the book, you'll know what I mean. Also, I want to say that I think Karan is probably the first director at the peak of his career to have written his memoir. And that calls for a certain amount of fearlessness, which Karan is, if anything, he is fearless. And he's a trendsetter. So I'm sure whether, it was earlier, if you look, whether he was doing his coffee show, whether it was, being a judge on reality TV, whether it was anything, he's done what he wanted to do. And he's done this book, and I am quite sure we're going to see more books coming out, because Karan is always the first to set the trend. It has been an absolute privilege being part of his journey with him while writing the book. And all I want to say is, when you read the book, you'll know kuch kuch hoga, zarur hoga.
Thank you, Millie. Good evening, everybody. When I was given the opportunity to create an imprint of my own, it was really an unprecedented honor, and I felt all my years as a writer somehow came together at that moment, because there's so much trust that is invested in someone who's given that responsibility. And I like to believe that I have handpicked winners, like Karan has handpicked winners. When I asked Karan whether he'd be willing to do the book, initially there was a little amount of hesitation, but like Millie has mentioned, like Poonam has said, there's a certain spontaneity and a positive energy about him which is unbeatable. She's talked about him not acting like a celebrity. It's that very aspect of Karan's life that I find so endearing. Today, I consider Karan a cultural icon. He's not just a director of very successful films, not just one of the most successful TV hosts, possibly globally, but he's something much, much beyond that. And like it was pointed out, it takes a lot of courage to put your life out there. He says it in one line. He says, "My life is my life." And he says it in the epilogue very wonderfully, and he says it even more beautifully in the end. That finally he's broken through whatever those inhibitions and barriers were that stopped him from speaking his mind. He's ready to share his life, warts and all. When Poonam started on the book, and we all were so excited about it, Millie and I talked about it at length, and we said, what should the content be? What should the tone be? At the end of the day, that is your prerogative, Karan. That is every writer who puts himself out there, every person's prerogative, what they wish to share and what they don't wish to share. When I wrote my memoir when I turned 50, which was 20 years ago, I called it Selective Memory. And people said, oh, so you're going to be selecting your memories. I said, yes, I am. It's up to me. What I want to put out there in the public domain is entirely my call, and only I can make it. But Karan has gone well beyond that, and he has written a book that is remarkably candid and remarkably courageous, because he has shared his vulnerabilities and moments from his life, his personal life, which honestly, I was reading and rereading the chapters as I came driving to the venue. And I felt there are 3 chapters which for me were sort of encapsulated what he's all about. One was the chapter dedicated to his father, his feelings about what happened in that hospital. Post that, when he came home, his mother, who plays a fantastic role in the book, and of course the Shahrukh Khan chapter, also written with so much love and at the same time so much truth. There's no attempt to say, oh, it's been one fantastic journey with no ups and downs. He talks about things not always working out between 2 people who love each other dearly. He talks about love in the most amazing manner. But behind all of it, what will come through is how each one of us is really quite lonely, and how to cope with that loneliness, and how not to let it get you down, but how it can actually be translated into a positive force in your life, which can lead you to create movies or music or books or poetry or paintings. It's the loneliness that starts the book, and it's loneliness which actually ends the book. But in between, there is just so much wonderfulness that anybody who picks up the book will respond to it first as a reader who gets completely drawn, pulled into another life. And that to me is the hallmark of a good memoir. If you cannot connect, if you cannot drown in that other person's life, if you cannot rejoice in that person's high points, and you don't cry at least 3 times during the narrative, the book is somehow incomplete, and somehow it leaves you feeling, has he really shared everything, or you're aching to know more? I am looking for a sequel, Karan, and tonight I can just say it. You can write it 5 years from now. I'll still be around, you'll still be around, and your readers will still be around. And I hope, like Poonam said and Millie said, these are books that need to be told, these are books that need to be written. These are our young heroes and great inspirations and icons of modern India. When they narrate their stories, and they do it without filters, and they do it with such style and panache, and at the same time with so much humanity, that book travels. That book travels not just for the next year. It's going to travel, Karan, for your entire life. And there'll be people who'll come up to you and say, I read it when I was at this age and it made such a deep impression on me, because it has a lot of messages in there without it being a message book. And I'm so proud of it, and I'm so proud that we had the chance to work together. With that, I believe we are going to be in conversation. Are we not, Millie? Thank you, Millie. Thank you, Poonam. Thank you, Team Penguin. Thank you, Shahrukh. Thank you all. It's a book that I hope, and I'm looking at someone sitting right there who I want to write the next book. She's still shying away from addressing it, but I know I'm going to get it out of her. She says she's too young to write it. I said there is no such thing. You can write your first book at 23 and it will still be amazing, because there are millions of young 23-year-olds out there, or even 63-year-olds who would want to read your story, Alia. Just do it. Thank you again. So Karan, let's get the easy stuff out of the way right now. The easiest part of the book, right? Why is India obsessed by your sexuality? Easy.
Well, that's for some reason, as I said, the word conjecture is the word I use very often on my talk show. Well, that is because when people don't have final answers, they tend to kind of, browse around the topic always. And so have I. And but in the book, I've said what I felt the need to, and I've said it in a way that I felt I needed to express it. And there's really nothing more to say. So I think that every answer anyone's looking for is in the book.
You know, there are several moments in that book where you talk about people confronting you at airports,
Yeah.
at parties, and saying the most gross things, the most insensitive things, and you come back to them is sassy but also a little sad. Why should anyone have to explain any aspect of their lives at all or defend it?
I think
Why?
people sometimes, when you're in the celebrity zone, I think people tend to sometimes just not know what to say. Like, I feel like when they encounter you, they either tend to overcompensate and say exceptionally polite things, or they'll say the most inappropriate things to you. I think anyone who's been in the celebrity space will tell you that you'll have people come and say the most overfamiliar things to you at times. And sometimes because they think that they own you, because you're in their living room on a daily basis, perhaps because of my television exposure, or the fact that one is around and all over the place, they feel they have an ownership over you. And sometimes that allows them to kind of cross the boundary of decency. And they'll say things that are inappropriate. And you'll have to stand there. Sometimes you can give a response back, which sometimes goes over their head, because it's not a straight-lined answer. And sometimes you use sarcasm, which also sometimes doesn't get a response. Sometimes all you do is just, like Shahrukh told me the other day, that now when people say things, he just nods. Because there's nothing else to say. Sometimes you just nod because people say the most bizarre things, and sometimes it's members of the fraternity, sometimes it's members of the media within the fraternity, sometimes it's random strangers at an airport, and you have to just deal with it. There's nothing you can do. You can't. At least I'm not the guy who's going to start getting into a fight, because I don't think I'll have the ability to handle it if I was at the receiving end. So I just let it pass.
May I share that one moment at the airport, which is in your book, so everyone's going to read it anyway,
Right.
where a person comes up to you, his wife is with him, and he walks up to you and says to you, "So, are you a homo?"
Yeah.
And your response is, "Why? Are you interested?" And I thought that was just fabulous. That's, the aplomb and the tight slap that probably the man warranted.
Well, it was it was what came out, literally it just came out very because I thought it was an exceptionally inappropriate thing. And the wife was clicking a photograph of mine while he was asking me this question, and he asked me, patting me on my back. It wasn't just a car; it was an overfamiliar pat, as if I had we had dinner last night, and he decided to ask me this question early in the morning. And it's happened to me. It's also in the book when I was on the launch of a channel, and it was an early morning breakfast interview where I was asked an inappropriate question, and I was completely shocked that we were on national television. Of course, it never made it because they realized that it was completely wrong. Fortunately, it wasn't a live telecast. But sometimes you just wonder whether people just don't have the sensitivity or the decency, or use language to ask a question that may not come across inappropriate. There are various ways. I'm a member of the media myself. I host a talk show. And I know sometimes when you want to kind of ask something, you can circumvent it with words and vocabulary. You don't suddenly just go out there and ask in the pretense of being completely candid, or then irreverent, or perhaps overfamiliar.
But the surprising part of the book, towards the end of the book, when you talk about maybe going on to dating sites, I found that fascinating, that you went on to an elite dating site and a date was set up for you in Tokyo, and you said, "Why should I go to Tokyo to meet someone?" How did you get onto these dating sites?
That's
why?
a story in itself.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to kind of scratch the surface to find, what's not immediately available. So there are various ways and means I think people sometimes have to kind of look at. When you're single and 44, you'll probably go through every kind of possible available opportunity.
I thought that was fantastic because most people would not admit it.
I would have actually liked to give the
addicted, but they
name.
won't.
It was a selective. I would have liked to give the name, but they're so exclusive and quiet and have full disclosure issues. So that's why I didn't give that information. Not that anything's come out of it, and I'm not a success story of their agency at all. In fact, I'm apparently 2 out of 3 people succeed, and I'm that one who failed.
You've also talked about 3.5 failed relationships. One true love, and I think 3.5 failed relationships. You've spoken about it with a great deal of some amount of regret but compassion, empathy about why they didn't work out.
Well, they were not any relationships. They were mostly unrequited love situations, which is great fodder for a filmmaker, not so great for a personal life. Yeah, I mean, I suppose that comes from your sense of indulgence and over-expectation. Sometimes you tend to expect from quarters that you know won't deliver, and that invariably happens when, you know, and that's what I call indulgence. Is like if I had a pragmatic approach to love, which is not possible with me, I would possibly have been in a long-standing relationship. But I've always desired what I know I can't have.
You also talked about divorce being the new marriage. And throughout the book, there is a kind of a strand which keeps going back to infidelity. And it's like almost a semi-obsessive aspect of your creative process to deconstruct everybody's marriages and to see who's cheating, who's lying, who's living a lie.
Because truly, in my experience, I think there's much ado about fidelity and infidelity. I think sometimes true emotion and relationships can go beyond those. And being a single bystander, you tend to be so close to so many relationships and marriages. And in my experience, and I say this, and I don't have any kind of, with all kinds of moral policing on my statement, I'm sure, but I don't think infidelity is a deal breaker. I don't believe
it's not a deal breaker.
No, I don't think so. And I feel like people, it's very individualistic. It's as per each one's life. And I feel like I'm not judgmental about it at all. And I'm not sure if I'm capable of complete fidelity, even if I was deeply in love.
But in your film, when you're talking about the process where you were going to shoot the scene, very interesting conversation that you had with Shahrukh, when all of you had second thoughts whether to go all the way and show Rani and him in bed or suggest that they've actually had sex, where you were advised against it, and even Shahrukh was not sure whether it should have that scene or it should be like the Meryl Streep scene where it ends without them actually doing it.
I was in a zone of abandon at that time. You know, I was like, I felt I had wings. I wanted to fly as a filmmaker. But when I look back, I feel like I remember very clearly, and I've said it, that when the scene was going on, I was watching it at a preview, and there was a very traditional couple watching it. And the moment Shahrukh and Rani check into the hotel in Kabhi Alvida, the lady turned to her husband and he said, "Don't worry, dream sequence hai." And because they imagined that this is not possible. You know, in a Karan Johar film, it's not possible that this would actually transpire. And the moment they realized it was not a dream sequence, 5 minutes later they were out of their cinema halls. So I realized that, you know, sometimes topics like this are brushed under the carpet in our society. We don't like to watch what is startling and truthful on celluloid. We like to watch virtue and morality, say the right messaging. The moment you make viewing uncomfortable, the moment you say things that hit you hard, those are the films that bother you the most, and you have extreme reactions. Kabhi Alvida had extreme reactions. I had people come and say, I hated it. The only reason you can hate it if it's the truth of your home. And it's the truth of your marriage. You can't hate that film otherwise. Or had people say, it's uncomfortable to see this film with my spouse. Because what do you say after? Oh, I loved the film. What did you love about it? You know, if I hated it, then why did you hate it so much? You know, so it's basically, it was more a commentary. So the film did so much, and someone told me that it did so much better in the West because there's a culture of watching film alone. So there are men who went alone and women who went alone. But in India, we go as a couple or as a family, and it's an uncomfortable watch sometimes.
I think that's changing. I see a lot of movies on my own in a theatre, and I enjoy it thoroughly. I think I see a lot of other ladies also coming and watching movies. It's changing. Thank God. There's a wonderful chapter on Shahrukh where the first time you meet him and you go with a certain baggage because you're awestruck, you expect to meet a big star and you're completely disarmed because he's so normal, he's warm, he's caring, he's very respectful towards your father. They have a relationship completely independent of...
I mean, it was, I remember the day so clearly etched in my head, like it's like it happened yesterday. I grew up with movie stars that were stalwarts, that were luminaries, that we literally looked up to, like Mr. Bachchan. You know, when he walked into the room, there was a sense of like, you know, like glory. Someone magnificent has walked in. So there was this stardom that I had realized, being a producer's son, stars were always put on a pedestal. We were always the poorer parties. We were the ones that had to kind of succumb to their stardom, look up to their full of awe, because they were the ones who made the movies happen. So I grew up feeling movie stars were like unapproachable entities. I had then lost track with the generation because I was in my college days, and I was touching base with my father's side of the business much later when he took me to meet Shahrukh to sign him for Duplicate. And I had never met somebody who was a young movie star, who was so loved at that time and everyone wanted him in their movies, who was this animated, this conversational, this what do I say, just this real person. So I was in shock. And the fact that he respected my father so much, the fact that he showed that respect meant the world to me, because up to that point I felt like my father had not had the best run at the movies, even with certain people and relationships. And when I saw Shahrukh give him that love, I think I fell in love with Shahrukh at that moment, because I saw the love he gave my father, and that to me meant the world. Nothing else mattered.
There's a lovely insight also when you talk about your father. I think that was beautiful, where you said that despite him achieving success by the time you started working together, in his head he was still like a production person. So it was his instinct to carry the bags of stars or open car doors for them.
And which my mother went hoarse trying to tell him, Yash, you're a producer, you're not a production manager, you shouldn't be doing these things.
But it's wonderful that you share it.
It was his instinct, he couldn't help it. He just couldn't, like whatever, and it was like, and I of course was born like I was a movie star in my head. Even though I had nothing, in my head I was always royalty. For some reason, I don't know where, my mother always said, I don't know where you came from, because I didn't have their value system, and I was always somebody who lived beyond my means. It was because I was pampered by my father. He allowed me to believe that. He really, when I was 150 kilos fat, thought I had 5 kilos of puppy weight that I should lose. He thought I was the most gorgeous looking son. Could have been a film hero, knowing very well I knew my personality would not allow me to be a lead in a Hindi film at all. But he thought he could have launched me. When we were talking about my first film, he said, "Tu thoda patla ho ja, tu kar sakta hai hero ka kaam." And I was like, at that point, I was like, how do I get love and balance it with delusion? Because my mother secretly, I think, always knew that I was not meant for certain things. But my father just loved me unabashedly.
There's also a wonderful moment that you talk about when Kajol, who you now don't have the same relationship with any longer, but maybe you will in future, when she told you that if you want to establish you want to assert yourself on the set, just come and shout the hell out of me, just come and yell at me to show that you're the boss. And you were faking, you were faking it, she was faking it. But I thought that was very generous of her and very smart of her to think of that. You were young, you were nervous, she was a huge star, and she says, just come out there and shout at me.
Yeah, and it's true. It's what happened. It's what's in the book, as are many other things. Kajol, I think enough has been said about recently, especially when excerpts of the book have been out. So I don't want to say any more about the fact that we have great history, and I want to remember just the history that we've shared. This is a moment in that history of nearly 25 years of a friendship. And sometimes chapters end, books end, relationships end.
But yet, you talk about when you hugged Shahrukh at Deepika's party, and suddenly, whatever tension there may have been, melted away. That one hug, there was so much love that was exchanged, and it was all eliminated.
I think there are ups and downs in so many relationships, but with Shahrukh, it's there is deep love. There's no other way of communicating the respect and love that I have for him. And I that ours will be a dynamic, and ours will be a relationship, and ours will be a connect that will be forever. It's only because my love for him has only grown over the last 2 decades. My love for his family has been so constant and consistent. And the fact that I think that their home is like a home for me in this city means a lot to me and my mother. My love for him is beyond work. My love for him and his family is beyond what he and I do professionally. It really is now a soul connect. I think we were meant to meet in this world, and I think it's because of my father that we have this connect, and we could possibly have our down days and our humongously up days, But what we cannot ever forget is the unabashed love that will remain, and the respect, more importantly, that I think has not been diminished, no matter what.
It has a lot to do with both of you being successful, very successful in your own right. You say that friendships in show business can only succeed if the two people involved are equally successful. Is there something like friendship at all in showbiz?
I've made some very strong friendships. Everyone in this room today is from my industry. My relationships define me. We're low on family. We have very few relatives that we're really connected with, me and my mom. So most of my personal connections are my family, and they're my extended family. I've made the most amazing relationships. In fact, I say this to Gauri, that I think I'm one of the reasons why I made her love people in the movies. Because when she came in, she was so reluctant to meet people because everyone comes with baggage. But some of my most deep equations and my most solid dynamics have been with people from the movies. So I think it's very unfair to say that relationships, yes, you go through ups and downs and there are always turbulent times. But I have to say that the soul and heart I've found within the fraternity and the industry has been amazing, and I will cherish those relationships for the rest of my life. They're all still there in my life. In fact, I'm a very constant person. People who've been in my life for over 2.5 decades are still there in a very strong space.
And finally, your book ends with your expressing a desire to perhaps adopt a child or have a surrogate child, and you talk about this child as your old age kind of a policy, to insurance policy in old age.
I think you have reason. I feel I have a nurturing quality in me, and I saw that most when I launched Alia, Varun and Sid. I felt like I can't let go of them even now. Like, I feel it's been nearly 5 years, and I feel no matter what they do in whatever capacity they do, when they're on screen or they're at an event or they're anywhere, I see myself staring at what they're doing, what they're saying. That shows that I actually have a sense, and even all the directors in Dharma, everyone in Dharma, to me, I'm maybe age-wise, say a decade apart from them, maybe more than that. But the emotion comes from a very strong paternal space. And I feel like I would like to take that forward. I don't know what I'm going to do about it, but I feel like I would like to be a parent. I don't know in what capacity. I don't know how it's going to happen. I have no clue, and I don't have answers to those questions. But I do feel the need, because I feel I have love to offer. And since it's there, and I'd like to take it forward, because I feel like that paternal instinct needs to be acted upon. And I feel it very strongly. Like, I feel like I have so much within me that I conserve, and I feel that love has to have a release, you know, and it's not going into a relationship. It goes abundantly to my love for my mother and my friends and all of them around me in my company. I love everyone. And like, to me, I don't think any of them will realize how deeply moved I am that so many of them are here today, and what they mean to me in my life. I sometimes don't express it enough because it's within me, and you know, and I feel like that love within me needs to find a platform, and I think that platform could be a parent platform.
Karan, I wish you every success. I hope a baby does come into your life. It'll transform you. It transforms everybody who's ever had a child, and I can tell you that from experience. With 4 grandchildren now, I can tell you that with double experience.
Yes.
So, blessings all the way. Make it happen for yourself. We are very proud of you. We are very proud of the book. It's already a bestseller, and it's got its first brilliant review. So, it's a day to celebrate, and may you always remain the wonderful, caring person you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shobha and Karan. I'd now like to invite Shahrukh to come up and release the book formally and say a few words. Thank you.
Do I say or do I just please sit down? No, please sit down. I'll just speak.
No, he said sit down. But pehle he'll speak.
Can you just,
Should I speak first? Or?
you want to speak first?
Yes, I will. Good evening, everyone. First of all, Mili Aishwarya, thank you for publishing the book. Shobha, for convincing Karan to write a book. And all his friends who are here, I'm sure, who have formulated his life, who have, done things in his life which comprise of the book that he's written. And Karan, it's a wonderful thing that you've done. I think yours is an extremely beautiful life. Yours is an extremely important life that people should read about. I don't know if people will learn or not, but it's important to know of your experiences. My only questioning part of this whole book is the title. I find that a little different. It could have been titled anything. It could have been titled, according to me, apart from the unsuitable boy, it could have been the good boy. Yeah, he's a good boy. If his father was here, he would vouch for it. His mother is here, she would vouch for it all the time. You know, there are very few boys who sit down with their mothers at night and discuss tele-shopping. He does that at 3 a.m. wherever he is in the middle of a party, but he'll come back and he'll say, Mom, मैंने सुना है वो tele-shopping network पर एक नई चीज़ आई है, let's sit down and buy it. That's a good boy. He's an intelligent boy. I think that's what the book could have been called. And intelligent not in terms of just general knowledge or Wikipedia stuff or the stuff we all read on Google, but he understands things, he understands people, he realizes situations. He walks into a room and he knows what's happening. And I find that extremely gifted. I think he has a gift from God that he can understand people and use it intelligently. And even with me, if I may say so, there are very few people who can keep up conversations with me because I'm such a genius. But really, I say that with humility and modesty. But he's been able to have conversations with me, the best conversations I've had in my life, late into nights in New York or here. Or sometimes when I'm just alone, I call Karan and say, let's just talk. He is perhaps one of the most intelligent conversationalists and speakers there is, at a personal level, at a professional level, or at any given level. And if he doesn't know it, he can wing it really, really well. I think he's a very sensitive boy. That's what the book could have been called. And it's a personal experience because I have the inability to express my feelings. I have oversensitivity issues. I am complexed and damaged. But I realize that the only person apart from my family now who can give me the space or figure out how I'm feeling has been only Karan. He can make out that Bhai is angry, Bhai is sad, can't say this to Bhai. And it's not just me. I've seen him being sensitive to everybody around, from the youngest of people, his team of Student of the Year, to the eldest of them all. And he can understand what is happening in your heart, what is happening in your soul. He's an extremely, extremely wonderfully gifted, sensitive person. The book could have been called The Brave Boy. And I say this with vehemence and conviction because Karan is different. He's extremely different. And not just in the unique sense, he's different. And it's difficult being different. Especially in our country, in the world we live in, the society that we have to face. He's just different. And to achieve what he has done, with the gusto that he's done this, with the aplomb that he's achieved this, is even beyond the greatest of achievements. Because to be different, and to do and be accepted, and to run wild and free in this world is a very, very special thing. I know him very personally. I haven't read the book. I don't know how much of the difference comes out in this book. But he is a different boy. He is a unique boy. And last but not least, when I say this, he's genuinely an extremely brave boy. And he's all of these put together. He makes a very special boy. To me, Karan Johar will always remain the most beautiful boy that I've ever seen in my life. And I'm extremely honored to be here. And I don't say it just because we're at a function and you're supposed to say this about a guy who's releasing his book. I'm extremely honored, genuinely. You know, there are different aspects. You think of yourself, when I was young, I thought if I get an X amount of awards, I would have arrived. If I got an interview with so-and-so journalist, I have arrived. If I made it to the cover of a magazine, specific one, I genuinely believe 25 years of work, 51 years of age, I truly, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for this, I truly believe my children, my wife, and myself, we truly have arrived because I have a full chapter in your book. So thank you so much. God bless you. And may Allah give you happiness, health, goodness, children, many of them, and everything that you ever wanted. God bless you, and thank you for calling me here and giving me such an honor. Thank you. Sorry, and my special thanks to my very special friend Poonam, who's helped him write this book. I understand with the paucity of time and running around that he must have given you. Thank you so much for convincing, all you ladies actually. Thank you, this is a very important book. God bless you all for making him do this. Thank you.
With that, we come to the end of this evening, but we have a lot of books available here which you can buy and get signed by Karan. Thank you so much, Shahrukh. Thank you, Karan. And thank you, all of you, for being here on this special evening. Yes. The evening will go on. Karan is a beautiful boy. He's also a very nice boy. He'll sign copies.
Yeah.
I think, for all the readers here who have come from far. And thank you again for being here. Thank you so much.
I'd like to personally thank all the members of the media who've come here today. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. All of you have been a big part of my journey, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you for always being so supportive. And many of you are friends in the house, and the ones who are not will always remain special, because most often good things are written in. I also have to say that all my friends and everyone at Dharma who have shown up today, thank you so much. You know who you are. You mean the world to me. You are my world. Thank you, Mummy. I love you.